Gonzaga Nation SI, Dan Dickow, Adam Morrison. This time we're going to preview San Francisco Gonzaga. I know we touched on this series a week or two ago, then the game was postponed, but this time the game is on. Instead of Gonzaga having a long break where they were initially supposed to play Pacific, then that game was postponed. It's now San Francisco traveling to Spokane to play Gonzaga Thursday night, 8 p.m. CBS Sports Network. Adam Morrison joins as usual. Adam, USF, they're pretty good this year. What's your early take on USF leading into this game, and what are your expectations from Gonzaga?
It's going to be, like the BYU game was in theory. It's going to be a game with two highly skilled teams that can get up and down the floor. San Francisco at one point was getting, top 25 votes this year. I believe they're still in the top 40. So this is a very good, highly skilled basketball team. I always like the stuff they run when they had Frankie Ferrari the years prior. So they run a lot of similar stuff to Gonzaga, 4-around-1, let your point guard come off a pick and roll, make decisions, space the floor. So I'm looking forward to this one. I like when the league is better, and so it's nice to see another team besides BYU, St. Mary's. I'm happy San Francisco's where they're at, and I'm glad the game is back on.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you mentioned Frankie Ferrari. I agree. He was a fun point guard to watch. Not to mention, he had a tremendous last name
Yeah.
that broadcasters like to kind of talk about throughout the broadcast. But they've got another great point guard this year in Jamari Bouye. He was a senior last year. These COVID rules give you an extra year. He has really improved his game. He's bolstered his leadership. Todd Golden is completely giving him the reins. What makes that extra year so vital for a college player? Because he's 22, 23 years old now, playing against a lot of 19-year-olds. How
Well,
big of an advantage is that?
I think just one body type. I mean, we all been in there, whether you're an athlete or not. You go from 19-year-old body to 22, 23-year-old body. That's a huge difference. And the physicality you can, impose on other people and what you can provide to your team night in and night out energy wise. And then leadership. I mean, he's probably in the, just like some of our guys, where he's probably played 100 to 120 college basketball games. So he's seen every situation for the most part. And, he can lead, obviously by example and experience. So I think just having that extra year, and especially like I said, in a point guard run system, kind of like ours, where a lot of the actions come off what the point guard reads and sees, having that extra year is just such a huge bonus.
The other thing about USF is they're so analytically driven. Todd Golden, one of the youngest head coaches in Division One, really believes in the value of the three-point shot. They shoot it around 40% from beyond the arc. They average about 10 made threes per game. When you were a player, how much did you look at the numbers as far as, hey, I want to get this many threes up against this opponent, or I need to take away these threes from our opponent?
I think that's all really changed in the last decade. So when I was playing, if you weren't like a 33% and above 3-point shooter, you were kind of discouraged from shooting it. And then, there'd be times if we got 23s up a night, and that wasn't very much, it'd be like, hey, we're shooting too many threes. Now there's benchmarks, right? We want to shoot 25, not bad ones, but 20 of them need to be really good. And maybe 5 bad ones are out of context or late clock or 2-for-1s or whatever. So that part of the game is kind of foreign to me, to be honest. Like, the only guy when I was playing that had the green light to shoot multiple threes consistently was Derek Rabio, and they used to tell him to shoot 10 because that was his game at that time. Now, as he got older, he could get into the paint. He had a nice float game. He had a layup package. But at the time, they looked at him as, hey, if he's coming off our flex action stuff that we used to run, he should shoot 10 threes because he was like a 40 to 42%. So like I said, I only shot probably 3 a game, maybe 4. And especially my sophomore and freshman year, I was a sub 40 3-point shooter. So I didn't really shoot a lot. So to be honest, I look at some of this stuff and I'm like, man, it would have been fun to just let them rip and without any consequence. But I mean, you understand the analytics part, the effective field goal percentage. If you shoot 30 of them and you make 12, I know that sounds like a bad percentage, but it's 36 points, obviously. So like you can have a bad shooting night and still get a chunk of your scoring from that. So it is different. What do you think about it as yourself as a former, point guard, but a scoring point guard who shot a lot of threes? I mean, like, is it foreign to you too? Because I mean, when you played, they were probably like, Dan, you only shoot threes, and Blake, and then Kyle
Yeah.
Bankhead. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's one of those things where like I I like going back and thinking about the what if, but it's also hard because it's so different. The game is different. I
yeah,
mean, we were more flex oriented than your groups were. You guys were a little bit more space it and give you angles, or wide pin downs, give you read options, whether you curl or you fade and pop and shoot. Where I did have the freedom to shoot a lot of threes in transition. I proved that out in practices to Coach Few. A lot of my threes honestly came in transition, where I would probe and I'd weave and I'd rub the defender in a drag screen situation and create some opportunities. But I look at now like, dude, give me 12 threes a game. I
yeah,
would I would have a smile all day long knowing I was getting 12 threes. But the game's different. The game's changed for good or bad. It's still to be determined. I guarantee you there's going to be another shift and another change in the next 7 or 8 years, where one team has a dominant post player, or they come up
yeah,
with a new scheme. And as basketball is, like most sports, it's a copycat sport. Something works, you gravitate and you tend in that direction. It'll go back in some way, shape, or form. What I hope stays true when that change happens is that the truly great shooters continue to have the freedom. Because right now, I think too many guys have the freedom to shoot that shot. Would you agree with
yeah.
that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. That you watch a lot of games, covering them. I do as well, and you're just, some of these guys, and it's not a knock on them as an amateur athlete or anything like that, but it's just like you shouldn't be shooting 5 threes a game. But the analytics tell you that it's okay. But then if you're just your eyeballs tell you, or your basketball IQs, you're like, that is bad shot out of context. That's not good basketball or what have you. Because a lot of times, as you know, like a 3-point shot leads to long rebounds. And if you play a fast team like Gonzaga, we want those. We're going to go clean it up. We're plus 11 on the glass on the season on average. So then let's get out and run. And it leads to, sometimes I was always told, bad 3-point shot is kind of almost like a turnover that leads to a fast break. But now, like we at Ford mentioned, it's like, go ahead and take it. And so sometimes you get a mix of, it could bleed into being bad basketball,
Yeah.
with the idea that we're doing it the right way for analytics. So it's always a fine balance, obviously, but then it's always funny. What if you're a team that's obviously outmatched personnel wise, and you shoot 35 a game, and you have a night you make 20 of them, and then you upset somebody in the tournament? Then that's the counterbalance to it. It's like, well, look at my personnel. I can't pound it inside. I can't take 14-foot contested two. So I'm going to shoot 35, 40 of them tonight. You get the logic of that from a coaching standpoint. I do as well. So it really is a fine balance. But yeah, there's some games where I'm like, man, this guy shouldn't be allowed to shoot at all.
100%. And that kind of leads to the next topic that I have. We're starting to get some questions on social media in regards to what your thoughts and my thoughts are on different things, whether it's Gonzaga or basketball related in general. The first question came in, it actually touches on shooting. And the question was, how much mechanic changes can you make in someone's jump shot during the season? And I think they're alluding to Hunter Salas, because when I saw his high school highlights, he kind of had that chicken wing going with his jump shot. His elbow was out. His mechanics have gotten much better over the last couple months. I've been impressed with that. But what's your take?
So interesting question. I mean, obviously for college player, I think you can mess with it a little bit. I always tell guys and younger players, mechanics to me are not as important if you can get the shot off in time. right? To me, we've all seen guys with different type of shots, but if they get it off at the speed of Division 1 or even high school varsity, then why does it matter? And if it goes in, why does it matter? Now, if it's completely messed up, I think it's a slow work in progress that you have to do during the season. And it literally just takes reps. You know, it's always a fine line to me though of messing with somebody's head during the season, mechanic wise, right? Because then you can put yourself into a slump mentally about overthinking when you shoot the basketball. You know how it is. You got to have a clear mind when you're a shooter. It's just plain and simple. Even if you're a guy only shoot 5-6 times a night, you got to have a clear mind and forget the misses before. So to answer that question, I know I went long form on it. I think you kind of just have to do it slowly throughout the season and encourage a lot of confidence. But again, if you can get it off during the game and within the context of the game, to me, what does it matter how it looks, if that makes sense?
No, you're right. I mean, I think the best fundamental form of a shooter I've ever seen is Klay Thompson. He's one of
Yep.
the 5 best shooters of all time. I think fundamentally one of the most awkward looking shots I've ever seen, Peja Stojakovic. Yet he
Yep.
was probably a top 10 shooter of all time as well. So there is a fine line about fundamentals, mechanics, and results. Because at the end of the day, it's results, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, we've all played against guys that had funky shots. I mean, I played Kevin Martin in the NBA that used to do the sidewinder sling, and he used to get buckets in the NBA.
Yeah.
They talk about Jamal Wilkes. I know that's going way back, but I mean, if you watch some of those highlights, that shot looked broke, but it went in, and it had chicken wing as well. To me, it's like, you can get obsessed with being perfect. I was always told, like, I had a sidewinder when I was growing up, and I just moved my elbow in a little bit and just moved my pocket. But like, my dad was always like, you don't have to be like perfectly angled. Like, who cares? Just
Yeah.
if it goes in and you can get it off. So hopefully, you mentioned Hunter Salas earlier. I think he's really improved his shot. I watch him before the game, and I'm always looking like, okay, does his form look good? Does it look good coming off his hand? It does. And that's not just me saying that because we're on a Gonzaga podcast. It looks like he's working on it. And in games, he hasn't shot any like terrible ones. I think he's just a drive first and like a ghost cut guy now. He's only a freshman. He's still young. He's making plays. So it's one of those deals where, like, keep giving it time. And by next year, if he puts in the reps this summer, we won't even talk about his jumper. We'll talk about the makes, things of that nature.
Yep. Last question that came in was, I know you guys are Gonzaga true and true, but if you had to pick another WCC school, not dependent on basketball program, what WCC school would you have gone to?
Is this San Diego? Like, is that really? Does anybody even like? Is that even a debate? I mean, obviously Malibu for Pepperdine, but yes, USD would be my first and only choice.
First and only choice. Wow. So
Yeah.
I'm a toss up. I mean, Pepperdine with Malibu, I almost went there out of high school. You're right. It's amazing. It's a toss up to me, USD or LMU, because I love LA. LMU is not that far from the beach, but I think at the end of the day, Adam, I think I'm right there with you. USD would be hard to beat. That city's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, and it's a beautiful campus as well. And you got the beach, and then if you want to go the state school route, you got San Diego State right down the road. It's a win-win.
Absolutely. Well, for another episode of Gonzaga Nation SI, Dan Dickow and Adam Morrison, we're bringing it 2 times a week content-wise. You got a question? Send it our way. If not, like, subscribe, and review on all the Gonzaga Nation channels. And don't forget to check out Sack and Jack, the new release from former Zag Rob Sacre as well as Jack Ferris. For another episode, appreciate it. Take care.